We are truly happy to have here with us the parents of the group. Friends, let us give a hand to Mr. Serg Sr. and her sister, Mrs. Mercy Amor. We would also like to acknowledge our principal sponsors, Mr. Richard Gomez and Congresswoman Lucy Marie Torres Gomez.
Mr. Leo Tuto Luxin and Mrs. Linda Sakay.
Attorney Ruby Mendola and Mrs. Cristina Salcedo.
Honorable Rolando Villasencio and Honorable Gloria Field.
Dr. Gregorio Erastorza III and Mrs. Ethel Salinas.
Mr. Vincent Rama and Mrs. Raquel Calusa.
Attorney Benedicto Pongos and Mrs. Emma Field.
Honorable Rolando Boris and Mrs. Emilicia Gomez. Boris.
Mr. Ernesto Barqueo and Dr. Artinia Luberas.
Honorable Dominador Patillo and Mrs. Nelda Padilla.
Honorables Joseph Solania and Mrs. Emma Porcadilla.
And Engineer Randy Ramilo and Dr. Maria Aurora Ramilo.
Engineer Manuel Bertodazo and Mrs. Marita Albieta.
Engineer Santiago Sohor and Dr. Ann Parilla.
Engineer Roger Rojas and Mrs. Maria Lili Tiamco.
Mr. Ricardo Igon and Mrs. Irinita Villarmino.
Mr. Ramon Vilio and Mrs. Paulita Icoy.
Mr. Bert Cateros and Mrs. Bella Gonzalez.
Mr. Rogelio Maglasan and Mrs. Bernadita Maglasan.
Mr. Pedrito Cuyos and Mrs. Gima Monterde.
Mr. Green Labroderes, Miss Judith Pañales.
Mr. Tom Kifar and Mrs. Marcy Kifar.
Mr. Robert Doe Jackson and Mrs. Maribek Jackson.
Mr. Romeo de la Cruz and Mrs. Velma de la Cruz.
Mr. Ricardo Dihanyo and Mrs. Laura Dihanyo. A wedding brings two people and their families together. It refreshes the family ties and friendship that have gone stale and almost forgotten against the toll of time and distance. For this, allow me to give a very special welcome to all who have traveled many miles to be here with us today. We would like to acknowledge the presence of families and friends who took their out to be here with us. At this point, I assume that everyone has settled down and you're all ready to welcome the newlyweds. May I request our lovely maid of honor, Miss Aisel, to please facilitate the welcoming party for our newlyweds. Today calls for a grand celebration, and it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you for the very first time, Junjun and Amor as husband and wife. So without any further ado, let us all rise and give our warmest welcome to Mr. and Mrs. Sergio Jr.
Heartbeats fast, colors and drum.
wedding dance of the couple, traditionally called the bano. Today is indeed a special day and will forever be each as a memory of our beloved couple. For today marks the beginning of their new life together. From this day forward, they shall be one. And in this joyful beginning, what could be more fitting than to celebrate it with their first dance? The first dance is involving the consummation of the wedding vows. This dance is the wedding couple's first cooperative engagement and joint endeavor. As the saying goes, it takes two to tango. Ladies and gentlemen, it is once again my privilege to present to you Mr. and Mrs. Hando for their first dance.
Bridesmaids, we ask you to give the names.
Yatag nila dito. Yung mga isuon, tanan.
And we ask especially the principal sponsors to take your, please go and take your give your pabaon to the newly couple.
Tani, ini pa. Ha? Tony, ini ni Amor. Ata dito pang pangutan na si Amor. Isabit na lang ninyo, isabit. Pangutan na si Amor. Doon nga to niya. Pangutan na ba?
Para rin sa ilang new start